Good morning, everybody. It's Peter here from AJS, also representing our sister company in New Zealand, G&A Warburtons. Welcome once again, where we take you into a jeweller's workshop somewhere in Australasia. And this week we're heading to sunny Geelong and the even sunnier Chris Sherwin. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Peter. Welcome, everybody.
Great to have you back on board, Chris. And today we're continuing our journey in earring connections, something a little bit more complicated than last time, I believe.
Yeah, I'm going to cover something a little bit more complicated because these sort of findings are pressure point findings, two components, if a minimum. And yeah, just a little bit more complicated, a bit of a challenge to people, something worth trying.
Beautiful. So now you're going to do a little recap on what we got up to last time, Chris?
Yeah, so last time we covered fishtail fittings, butterflies, getting a nice connection between your post through the ear and the butterfly, how to make them firm, how to shape them, how to bend them up. And we also looked at making hooks, nice consistent findings, simple findings that connect, a hanging earring or a stud earring to the ear. And I think we sort of covered that quite successfully. So today I just thought I'd ramp this up a little bit and show you how to make more complex earrings, and really ones that are for very expensive jewelry, for security, and also for those rare customers who just don't have their ears pierced. So sort of a pressure fitting earring where people don't have a hole in their ear, and therefore they want to actually push the finding up against the back of the ear. So they're okay. Complex to make.
Which ones do you wear, Chris?
Neither. I don't have ears. I'm too cheap.
Yeah,
I wear
I'm in
rings,
your boat.
but I don't wear earrings.
At least you're good at making them. That's good.
Yeah, no, I'm happy making them. And you do come across challenges, and clients do have special needs. So you just have to be able to do it.
Indeed. Okay, where do we start today then?
So the first one I'll start with is the one that's sort of a bit old-fashioned, commercially available. I'm fairly sure PKs have got them, but these are little spring fittings. I'll just show you those on the screen. They generally have this type of shape to them. They look, sort of like a little top of a crown, if you like, and they've got a little split on them. And at the bottom, they have a little joint that they fit into, and they spring around that joint. So they flick up out of way, and then when the client puts the earrings on, they're pulled forward and they clip up against the back of the earlobe.
Okay. Could you just hold that a little bit closer to the camera just for a second?
Yeah. I'll hold it up nice and close, and I'll pull it apart and show you the two components. So that's the complete earring fitting, and that's the joint itself. So two components. I'm going to pull it apart, unclip. So the joint is like a little basket with a couple of drill holes through the side of it. Is that a bit too close? How's that?
A bit blurry at the minute.
Yeah, it's a little bit blurry. It's probably focusing on something. But it's like a little box shape. I'll show you how to make up the box shape.
Okay.
That's your actual joint. And the clip itself, weird looking thing, if you like. It's got a little tail to it. I think that really is focusing on the background. So you can see the extra little tail at the top there. Two little arms coming out either side. They lock into the joint, and it's just shaped nicely to fit against the back of the earlobe. So it's got a nice little curve at the back. So like a bit of an S shape to it. So I'll take you through that one. With these sorts of earrings, I make templates up for them because you don't make them often, and I like to make up a template out of material which I don't cut up or use. So this gives you an idea, just sort of black and white, what that piece looked like before I cut it out of a piece of sheet. And I usually cut up a template. This one's almost completed. we'll finish this one off together if you like. This one's got one of the little arms chopped out of it, and one's like a little rectangle at the bottom that's not chopped up yet. But I'll keep one of these so I can scribe the next earring that I make directly out of the template. I don't have to imagine it all again or work out what size I was using. I've got a sheet of metal that I simply lay down onto my pre-finished sheet, scribe it out with the scribe, and then put the template aside and then make up the new fitting. When we're kids at school, we did that with cardboard and things like that. You have little templates and cardboard. So a template's no different from, using a circular template that you use in technical drawing. So it's effectively the reverse of one of those. You use the template to scribe out your circle, and in this case, you use the template to shape up the piece of metal that you want to reproduce. And that saves you a lot of, memory space and mucking around. Was that 12 millimeters long, or how thick was that material? It's all in the template. It's just a matter of scratching it out and drawing it.
Yep, no need to reinvent the wheel, hey?
That's right. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You still have to be on board and be awake. There are things you do have to remember. Yeah. So it is quite complicated. So if you want to ask questions, put them through to Peter. So 2 components effectively, something to hold the moving mechanism and the actual bit that moves itself. And I'm going to show you 3 types of earrings. So we'll start on the first one. That was the one I showed you. So this is the bit that I've drawn out onto the silver sheet with the little black lines. That's the actual shape that we're going to get. And because I make the template the correct thickness, I know exactly what thickness to make the material, and I make my new sheet fit underneath the template. Now, this material has to be half hard. It has to be semi-rolled, and that's the bit I have to remember every time. Before I cut out my template, I have to roll the material so it's not soft and it's not fully hardened, but it's certainly half hard. It has to have a springing action to it, because that's what makes all of these fittings work, is tension. So there's something to keep in mind. Don't use fully annealed metal. So I'm going to take the one I've partly started. I'll hold this one up. This is the one that still needs a little bit of cutting out on one corner. You can see there's a little, hold my hand up behind it. So there's one little arm there and one missing. And you can also see there are a couple of little saw cuts come down, which help separate the center spring from the 2 arms. But I'll just cut that out quickly first so that it's completely symmetrical. So put the spec on. Chop out this remaining section carefully. I'm going that way. So there are effectively two lugs. And they fit into the joint. And this is precision work here. Once you're a saw blade thickness out, you've probably got to start again. So you have to be quite accurate. I said you can buy these fittings. I've seen them. They are clearly quicker and easier to buy. But this is an exercise in skill, let's face it. So you're trying to learn how to make things and increase your technical knowledge.
And there's a lot of satisfaction to be gained from that, I'm sure, Chris.
A great deal of satisfaction. And as has happened to me recently, I was looking for some bindings. I was looking for a setting for a stone, and I went to one company and they said, oh yes, well, no, we've got that one. And I said, oh great, I'll have one of those in 18 karat yellow gold, please. And they said, oh, we don't make that in 18 karat yellow, we only make it in white gold. So I could have gone away and cried in my sleep, but no, I just thought, no, I'll hand make it. I can't buy the one that I need, I'll just make it by hand. So there we go. Now we've got two little lugs. I'll hold that one up again. That one's got the two little arms coming out there, one left, one right, and then the little pin coming down. So it's all out of one sheet of metal.
Mm-hmm.
But when I turn it, you'll see that it's got a little S shape to it. I'll try not to drop this on the floor. See the little curve? That top bit is the bit that snuggles in against the earlobe.
Yep.
The bit I'm holding at the bottom there is the bit that forms the spring tension. Just turn it around. You can see I've got a couple of drill holes in there, up where those sort of little ear shapes are, and then I've cut my way down to the little spring fitting at the bottom. So this little piece at the very, very base is going to form the spring against the bridge. So now that I've formed that, I have to fit that into this little box. I'm going to hold the box up again. So the box shape, these are a little bit hard to see. It's a little box. That's the base of the box. I'll turn the side around. The side has a hole either side of that box. And it's got a little back on it as well, which I'm holding onto with the tweezers. And those two little feet fit into those two little holes. So I'm going to put this together. Try and do it slowly so you can see what's going on. Here's the box. Here is the fitting. You can see the two little feet there. And I put one foot into the hole on one side. And I tilt the fitting down and squeeze the little foot under. I can squeeze it down and click it into the other side. So it's now actually sitting in the box, and that little extension piece at the back sits over the back wall of the joint. And when I lift the pin up, let's see if I can turn that. It's very difficult to show you, but as I lift it up, you can see this, the spring separates and then it comes together again.
Okay.
So it sits over the back of that box. There you can see it. That's it all the way over the back. Very hard to hold. And when I pull it down, very hard to see. It then just sits on the top of the back of the box. So it's very important, the length of that arm, that it extends past the two little feet. So it sits on the top of the box, virtually no pressure. And as soon as I lift it back, the pressure comes on to the spring. So that's as simple. You can buy them. But what's important about all of this is that when you purchase it or you make it by hand, before you put it onto your object, make sure you pull it apart and then solder your bridge onto the object. Because the bridge, which starts out like, I didn't show you the bridge, but this is the bridge. That's your bridge there, ready to bend up. I've actually it's like a little T-piece, two sides and a back. And I've put the square file over that, cut it with the blade, and I'll bend that up for you now. So just show you how it bends up the shape. But it's important that your spring section does not go through the fire. If your spring goes through the fire, you won't have a spring. So that's the back of the box folded up now. I'm holding onto the two sides. Did a nice job with this, so they should pull up easily. That's one side up. And then one side in my thumb to pull around. Pull around with the finger. It does nicely. I'm very happy with that one. Gosh. So that's the little box shape. That's the back of the box, side, and the front. And what I have to do now is I have to drill into the side of the box to put the hole in there on either side for the little feet of the spring to go into. So we'll move off that one. That's a pretty basic one. So as I said, to recap on that, it's two components. There's a bridge section or a joint with two holes in it. And then there's the actual clip itself for the ear that's got the spring on it for the earring itself. You see the two little drill holes I drilled in, then I carefully cut my way down with the saw frame to separate the two little legs from the center bit. So it's almost like, sort of three legs, if you like. So if you've got any questions, just put those through to Peter and we can try to answer them. But that must not go through the fire. You locate your bridge, your joint, solder that on, and then once the earring is complete, you can finish off the spring. The only thing I didn't talk about in my sample was once you've shaped the piece up, got curvature into it, you'll then need to manipulate the little feet and bend the spring out to separate it from the legs. So there's a little bit of work in just manipulating with your pliers. This is the one I did earlier, but I cut the piece off. You can see it's all just in an S shape. It's quite flat. And all I need to do at the very end is grab the little legs with the pliers, and which way I've got to go? I've got to go this way. Just get a little bit of separation from the center leg. Turn that, flick that, and you see that they're not in alignment anymore. So there's just a bit of manipulation between those pieces to get the tension right. So you might have to fit it 4 or 5 times to get the tension correct. So that's a typical earring with tension for an earlobe that's not pierced. And it allows the customer to put it up against their ear, close it up, and you should have enough tension on that piece to hold it comfortably on the earlobe.
Then it's a fine line, I'm sure, Chris, as to you don't want too much tension, but you don't want it to fall off. So.
Exactly right. They are fiddly, and I think until you've made a few pairs, you finally work out where you're getting it right, where you're getting it wrong. So I'll move on to the next one, which is much more sort of handmade. This is a handmade joint, similar idea. This is the little bit that goes up against the earlobe, and there is a joint here, which is on this piece of chenier. So you've got, looks like a bit like a sort of paddle pop, but this is a bit that goes against the ear, and this is the joint. And again, it's 2 pieces, and they fit around a central chenier. But I quite like this fitting. I've done this a few times with the clients, and they've been really fairly impressed because it is handmade. It does look handmade. With this fitting, on the legs of the joint, I'm going to show you how I do that. I put a pressure point on it so that when I pull the earring up, I'll try to get it in the right angle. Yeah. Not easy to work in movie world, that's for sure. When that gets pushed up, it gets stiffer and stiffer. So as this pushes up, if you can imagine, this is my earlobe here. As I pull up to the earlobe, it gets harder and tighter and tighter. So now I'm sort of on 90 degrees. This is quite tight. When I hold the joint and I pull backwards off the earlobe, it falls away. So as I come up, it gets tighter and tighter and tighter against the ear. And that's what I really like about these fittings. Unlike the other one where you're requiring spring pressure to work and you've got to get the spring just right, this one gets tighter and tighter as you push it against the lobe. So you've got control over how much pressure you have on the lobe. So that's my favorite because it is handmade. And to do that, I do have templates, 2 templates, one for the earlobe, T for template, looks like a paddle pop stick sort of thing, tennis racket if you like, little shape like that. It's about 0.65 thick in silver, and that's the little joint end, which looks like 2 little kidneys stuck on a little piece of joining, connecting wire between the 2. So it's just one continuous piece of wire. little kidney shapes, and the little tennis racket, squash racket. So I keep those templates, and every time I make them, I mark them out, scribe them over a piece of metal, and Bob's your uncle, chop them out, I've got them. So once I've done that, once I've cut out my pair, scribe them up, I then have to bend up the joint. So that's the joint section, the two little kidney bits.
Yep.
And I bend that up into a shape a little bit like this. So I've got the separation. There's my little kidney shape on the end. Two little kidney shapes facing each other. Hold that with the pliers if I can. Turn it around for you. So that's the shape, and the bit that I'm holding under with the pliers is where it's solders to the object. So it'll be sitting on the object like that, and there'll be this little kidney shape which squeezes around the paddle pop. Perhaps best if I pull this one apart. That's it together. And slide them off. That's the joint. And that's the little paddle pop bit that goes in the middle, and that squeezes it between, and the chenier joins the two together. I think that's reasonably clear. People get
beautiful
an idea how that works. That's it from the side. And obviously my chenier goes all the way through and holds it together. Now, the magic bit, the bit that's going to be hard to see. What makes this work is not the chenier holding it together, but if you look super closely at my little kidney shape, I've got my drill hole at the bottom, but at the top, there's a little dint at the top up here. Probably very hard to see, but I'm going to show you.
We can see it. We can see it. Yeah.
See that little dint there?
Yeah.
And that there's one of there, you can see it. There's one on either side. And if I turn that around, you'll see that this is a little bit tighter at the top than at the bottom. I squeeze these deliberately with my pliers from the top. So the top section is slightly tighter than the bottom section. And that little dint I create using a spring punch. It's the only thing I've ever found these useful for. So a little spring punch, sure you can still buy them. They twist at the top, and they've got a springing mechanism. They're mainly made for, I think, serious metalwork in steel. But that punch, depending on the amount of spring pressure you put onto the punch, when you click it down, drives the force through the material and leaves quite a strong mark. These are used for centering before you use a large pedestal drill for drilling, vertical drilling with a pedestal drill.
Okay, yep.
Instead of just using a scribe to make the mark, you use the spring punch and it leaves a little divot behind, and that centers your center of your twist drill into the center of the hole so that it can't deviate, it goes straight through. So when I make those little paddles up and I bent the little paddle around, which I've done on this one, I drill it out. So I'm going to finish drilling it out with you, and then I'm going to center punch it, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So I've marked where my drill hole goes. I've drilled through once. Go through with the ball burr. That side, turn it over to this side. Again, this is tricky because you've got to get everything to line up. I'm going through with a smaller ball burr than the finished near size, because effectively this is riveted together in the end using a chenier and reverse riveting. So you're turning the rivet outwards. That side, through there. Line these holes up properly. There we go, all the way through. change to my larger ball burr and open it up to the full size carefully. It's a bit blunt, that drill. Good. Very blunt. Find a fresh one. Oh, here we go. Nothing like a bit of beeswax to make your burr decide to cut. Almost there. Probably not the sort of thing you want to rush. You do want to get your chenille very nicely centered. That one's through. That one's through. Just try my chenille. Yeah, just going to need a little bit of adjustment. I can probably do that with a needle file. Put that through from two sides. Yep, no, I've got good alignment on that. I'm happy with that. Just have to open that up a little bit with the needle file. So that's the joint component. I'll finish that off later. So I'll hold that up. I've got my drill hole through. Just needs a bit of a tidy up. So I've got my drill hole through and I've still got that eggy bit at the top there. And that's where I'm going to put in the spring punch to create the tension. And then I'm going to splay those a little bit differently. That's the opening at the top there at the side.
Uh-oh.
Oops. I saw a joke online recently about jewelers assuming the jeweler's position, looking for diamonds. When they don't come to clean up their workshop is when they scrabble around the floor looking for diamonds. Quite funny.
Have you been in that position, Chris?
Oh, I've been in the jeweler's position before. Absolutely.
Yes.
So to center punch this, at this stage, what I slide in is just a little piece of scrap material into the gap between the two little bunny ears, if you like. So I'm sort of holding it in a piece of scrap there because I don't want to damage the material, but I do want the spring punch to have an effect to drive in a little pinch point on that little ear. And I'm going to punch it from both sides. So what do I do with my spring punch? Here it is. Just going to test the pressure on the punch by winding it back a bit. That's probably enough sort of pressure. I'm going to put this onto the steel block. Find the point, the center point, just halfway between the, actually what I'm going to do so you can see this, I'm going to clean this off with the emery stick. So halfway between the top of that little egg shape and the hole I've drilled for the chenille, I'm going to send the center punch down and make a mark. And because I've got this soft material between the two, it'll allow that pinch point to go through to the inside of that sheet. So here I go, sit on there carefully. Put the center point punch on and drive that down. Yep, that's going to tighten up a little bit more, give it a bit more pressure. That's it, and turn it over and do the same on the other side. So I think it's sort of a combination of these two little pinch points from the spring punch. Do that the second time. And when I finally align this after soldering it, I can actually squeeze those shapes in so that they're kind of squeezed in a bit more at the top, and the pinch point and that unparalleled side will create the tension. Yep, I'm pretty happy with that. Just pull my arms out of alignment a little bit. Going to just straighten those a fraction. Otherwise my chenille won't fit. Go back to cleaning up this opening. See if I can get my chenille in and prove to you that it does work. Could take the burrs off my drill holes. Yeah, it's great. Nice and tight, super tight. Too tight, but that's okay. Yep, I've got my chenille through now. So it's chenille through the fitting, but my two little bunny ears are probably a little bit close together. But I've got to go on to fitting my little bracket shape in there. I'm just going to open those little bunny ears up with the pliers a little bit. Okay, so I've got my little racket shape. Now that racket shape, I need to put a twist on it. So the finished one looks like that. So there's a complete twist on the stem of that shape going into the bit on the earlobe. So the two things have to happen to this flat sheet. I have to dome the back of this big paddle so that it fits comfortably onto the earlobe, but I've got to do a full 90-degree twist on the stem, so the handle part, so that it comes in alignment with the joint.
This is like a high dive. Does it come with a pike as well?
Yeah. I said there was a lot to these. They're fairly complicated, but they're incredibly satisfying when you get them done. So I'm going to just turn around to my timber block here, and I'm going to put a bit of a dimple into my paddle shape with the ball punch. In fact, I'm going to go with a larger ball punch. What have I got? Something maybe about 9 or 10 mil. You could do this in a chenille block, but it's good to use the timber block. Punching the timber to make a nice dome. Place my piece in there. That's better. Just get a nice shape to it. A little bit off center. There's a little bit more work, this one. I could actually anneal this because I've got to do a full twist in the stem. I'm going to have to reshape that a little bit, but I've now got quite a big dome on that.
The camera?
Yeah, that separate little camera there. It's
a
bit more heavily domed. You can see where I've been punching it at the back there. I guess I could put it into a doming block. I might try that as well. Get my doming block out. I just want to wreck the stem. I'm trying to keep the stem clear and clean. Go up the size. Yeah, it's just damaged the edge of my piece a little bit. I'll sort of avoid that, I think. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to twist that stem. So I'm going to grab onto my dome section and use a second pair of pliers and put a full twist to the stem. So hold them a fair way up. Here we go, 45 degrees, 90 degrees, or close to 90 degrees. bit like making a Mobius twist.
What sort of twist is that?
Mobius twist. These rings that have a twist to the top, and they've got what's called an eternity spiral.
Oh, okay.
They call them Mobius rings or Mobius rings.
Right.
So now I've got my punch top, and I've turned that little handle at 90 degrees with a little paddle at the bottom there, ready to be drilled out, and that will take the schneer coupled with the joint.
Well done.
I've probably already slipped this into the joint. Might need to just open up a bit there. They're already starting to go together. Look at that. So slip together, but I've got to drill all the way through the paddle, and then that will be the same as the other one. So I'll quickly do that. How are we going for time? I'm not going too badly. So I'm going to just mark that. Make sure I've got it in the right spot before I drill it. That always helps. Always looking for something. Too many tools. Far too many. But you need every one of them. What can I say? Yep.
Exactly.
That's going to work for me. So I mark the little circle on the paddle. Don't know what we all did before they brought in black texture pens or marker pens, fine liners. Everything was scribed with a scribe.
Oh, okay.
More old world than me. That's the only thing you ever used to mark out anything was a little scribe.
Ah, right.
And now
the text has taken over.
Everything's a black pen, so you can see it. As you get older, you see less. So drill that through. 1 mil drill bit. That's done. And then a 2 and a bit ball burr. So the size I'm working to is, just so you get an idea of the schneer sizes, I'm trying to get out to 2.8 mil. So I can comfortably go through with a 2 mil ball burr. It's nicely centered. Well, that woke me up.
How's that?
And then change. And then up to my 2.7, 2.8 ball burr. Just on schneer size. And then those two pieces will fit together. It's my blunt ball burr. Almost there. Oh boy, that's hot. Nothing like a blunt drill to wake you up.
Oh, that's what you meant. It made the piece hot.
Yeah, I didn't mean the piece was hot. I just meant my fingers were hot.
Right.
The jewellery is only hot when it's finished. Hopefully. There we go. So that's drilled through nicely. Give that a quick clean. And then they'll fit together. And I can put the schneer through the two. Turn that round. So now I've got to think about direction because it has to fit the right way. Yep. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap over to my original piece because I've made the sharpness just a little bit short. I don't want to muck around with it. So go back to the original piece, slide that in, make sure that's the right way around. Line those up and put the schneer through. This might be a bit difficult because I'm using a second joint. That's gone through, that's fine. And let's just see if my tension point works. Yep, definitely getting tighter. So I'll try to show this on the camera. So there is the piece, the two bits together, the joint at the bottom and the paddle bit at the top. And you've got to imagine your earlobe is on the camera side. If I turn it to the side, oh, very difficult to turn to the side. Gee, it's hard to be in movie world, isn't it? And got to turn it this way. As I pull up on this joint, the little egg shape, which I've got the divots in, will start to grab onto the shaft of that paddle. So this section of the paddle here, where the neck is where the force is going to come from those little divots. And as I push it up higher and higher, it's harder and harder to push up against the earlobe, because my earlobe is now here. The earring is at the front. And as you push it up, those two little divots are going to squeeze on the shaft of that paddle, and you can get a really nice comfort fit. So all I've got to do now is pull it apart, solder my joint section to the earring itself, make sure the paddle is off, and then after it's all together, I put the paddle back on, put the chenier through, cut the chenier to size, so pull it up, cut the chenier to size, and then reverse rivet the chenier, and I've got a perfectly fitted, strong pressure point earring. And of course, you'll need two of them, so you're going to get lots of practice.
Unless
exactly the same.
Unless Vincent van Gogh orders a pair. Yeah. Chances are unlikely.
Yeah, you get somewhere eventually, don't you? Is that that's the theory anyway? All right.
You get sorry, Chris, what was that? You get where eventually?
I'm sorry?
What did you say? Sorry, you get somewhere eventually?
You do get somewhere eventually, but where you get to, that's up to you.
Oh, okay. Or the universe, indeed. Yeah.
You eventually get back to the universe.
Mm.
The last one. This is the creme de la creme of earring fittings. This is the super hard one, and I'll walk you through a lot of this one rather than show you. But I'll show you the fitting first. Okay, this is a spring back fitting with a post. You can make these without the post. Some people just make the spring back fittings and they use them just like the previous earring, where you just want a pressure point for someone who doesn't have pierced ears. So that's okay. They work for that as well. But this is the type of earring fitting you'd make normally in gold, because it's a huge amount of labor, a high degree of skill, and labor and skill equals more money. And also you would use these for very expensive earrings. So if you went to buy a $25,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $100,000 pair of earrings, or $1 million pair of earrings, this is the type of fitting you'd have.
Mm.
And the reason for that is that the post, someone who's got that sort of money probably has got more guts than me, and they've got their ears pierced, so that the pin does go through your ear, but the spring back at the back puts the pressure point onto the earring, so you don't have a butterfly you can lose. There's nothing to be lost from these earrings. You either lose the earrings totally, they work perfectly. And I'm pretty confident if you were wearing $50,000 earrings, you'd be pretty comfortable not having to find where's that butterfly? I can't find the fishtail fitting for the back of the post. It's all in the one unit. There it is. Now, these are great to make. I remember being, I was never an apprentice, but I remember being a very young jeweler working for other people and having to make these, and they're quite a challenge. But they're fun. They really are fun to make. When you've made, you can actually buy these. Perhaps I shouldn't say that. You can buy them, and they are, if the good quality ones are really expensive, and they're machine made. So you can imagine how much a pair of these would be worth handmade. So again, they're very similar shape to the first one I showed you on that little paddle, something that's curved up, that flicks back onto your ear, but they're made from wire, and they have a solid joint on them, or a chenier set joint. So let's just go through how you'd make these. The first thing you need is some wire. And these are silver, so I'm working a little bit heavier. This was 2mm wire, and the golden rule is you, again, have to have some work hardening to your wire. You can't just pick up a bit of 2mm annealed wire and shape these up and get a good result, because they'll be too soft. So I draw this out to from 2mm down to 1.85, so about 3 holes of the draw plate, which is not a lot, but it's semi-hard. So it's semi-hard wire, which is going to give you the spring tension that you need, the pressure point that you need. So I bend up my wire, and then I obviously use my pliers, round nose and flats, these sort of pliers. I'm generous with my wire, and I'm obviously going to bend my wire up around the pliers to create the shape. And once I bent that up, I'm not going to show you that, but I'm going to show you the result. The result is going to be something like this. This is obviously bent in several directions. It's the same piece of wire bent up around the round nose part of the pliers. And then it's shaped into the 2 little armatures, the 2 little spring sections. So I'll take that off the pliers. This is the round bit that goes up against your earlobe, nicely curved, nice and soft. This little circular bit is where the pin goes through. So when you make up your earring, the pin goes through the ears, and that flicks up onto the back of the ear on the earring to make it secure. So once it goes on, the customer can't lose the earring, because your earlobe is stuck between the spring and the back of the earring. Okay. So I make that shape up. It's nice and springy. As soon as I squeeze the little legs together, they spring out. I just now have to cut it to size. So if you can see there, I've actually got a couple of little black marks with the texture pen. There they are.
Yep.
And I know I'm going to cut that just to length. So be generous with your wire, so you get the right length. Get a nice little S shape into it, nice little curve, and then curving back in the opposite direction for the earlobe. And that's your little fitting. So I'm going to quickly cut those off to length, because I've made one already. And remember, you're always making a pair, and that's the challenge with the earrings, isn't it? You've got to do it twice, and they've got to look the same. So chop that one off. Chop that one off. And the hard bit hasn't begun yet.
Uh-oh.
We've just started.
At least you're smiling, Chris.
So just recapping, think of your materials. Think about the tension that you're using, because these are all tension settings that you have to do. You have to prepare your metal so that it's half hard or partly hard. And that's part of the difficulty of making them, is remembering to prepare your materials correctly. Okay, so I've now filed those with my third cut file to be parallel and the same length. Right. There we go, they're done. So that's now cut to length. There they are. The feet are nice and parallel. And I've got this really lovely tension on that wire, partly because of the thickness. So, 1.85 down from 2mm, but also partly because I've hand drawn it by 2 or 3 holes on the draw plate. That's the tension I need on those wires. It's very, very important. Without that, this won't work. Okay, so why is that going to work? It's going to work because I'm going to make up a joint. Got my joint on a piece of wire here to show you. So that's out of a solid block of 2mm sheet. Okay. Little wire shape. And you could make this with a chenier at the top where I've got my wire going through, but I've done it out of a solid block because it just saves a solder joint. And as I said, it's 2mm thick. And that little pin goes through a drill hole at the top there. Pull that out. And it's very fine 0.5 drill hole through there, both sides. Now that's not easy to do. To drill a 0.6 through 2 mils of metal, it's about 2 mils thick that way as well. Looks a bit like a slingshot with a very short lead. So that's my joint. So I'm not going to do that because this takes a lot of time and it's very easy to break a drill bit. But clearly I have to get a very fine drill bit. Pretty sure that's a 0.6. Yep, it is. So I would make up the block. The block doesn't have to be hardened, and you can also curve that block if you want to have a nice little curve on it rather than straight up and down. You can do that, but I have to drill through the side of that block very carefully all the way through to the other side so that you've got a drill hole that's nice and parallel all the way through that block. Very, very, very fine. Okay, so I've now made the block up, shaped it up to size, to shape that I want. And obviously it has to be, the opening at the top has to be tighter than the little feet on my spring-loaded fitting, because if I put that fitting in, I'm going to do that now. I've got to squeeze the legs together. Beautiful. So I've now put that fitting into the block. You can see the end of the wires. And I'll just turn it to show you. See how the feet are squeezed together? There's hardly any gap between them. So for me to take that out, I've got to really grab the block, and you can see the feet spring all the way out because it's that pressure which holds the feet in. In fact, you might even be able to hear that jumping out.
Yeah.
It's a lot of tension. So now comes the really difficult part with these earrings. You have to drill this wire through at 0.6. And it's only 1.85 thick. If you're working in gold, it would probably be about a 1.5 mil wire. So you've got very little distance between the edge of the wire and putting that drill through. If you're not absolutely precisely in the center of that wire, you're going to weaken those feet and they won't work. So you have to put that wire back into your joint, precisely into position, and then get your drill bit and start the drill hole, and then remove that piece, and then very carefully drill through one of your wires, and then you're going to have to do the other side. One little trick you could use, you could actually file a very, very small flat spot where you're drilling through. I'm not going to show you how to do that because it would literally take me 5 to 10 minutes just to drill the 2 holes, to really take my time to get them right. So I'll just take the one that I've got finished. This is the one that's put together. I'll turn it upside down. It might be a bit easy to see. That's the clip. That's my post. The earring is upside down. When I flick it down, you can hear it click closed. And that's my joint from the side. And I've got a little piece of wire through there, so I can actually pull that piece of wire out, which I'm going to do. Because there's a lot of fitting to these. This is just a piece of wire that goes through to hold it together. Pull that out, put that to the side. There's the piece without the wire. And the drill holes would line all the way through. You can just see how the feet protrude a little bit past the end of the joint, just a fraction.
Yeah.
And I'm going to squeeze that and lift it out. So that's lifted out. Put the two together. You can just see the super fine drill holes there. Hang on, back to technology again. Tiny little drill holes through. You can just see them there on the wire.
You could have been a brain surgeon.
Yeah, should have been. Sorry about the brain. Yeah, so once they all go together, what you also have to do, again, it's a bit hard to show, is you have to put a groove. One of the things that makes this work is that the sides on that joint are flat. And for that wire to fit in there and click properly, there has to be a groove in the joint itself. So I take that out and I use a superfine needle file and I put a groove on the inside of that joint. And I go to the other side and I put a groove on this side of the joint as well. So there's 2 grooves on the inside of the joint. And that round groove is what fits to the wire. And that makes sure that when the spring is in position, when the clip is in position, when I pull up on the spring, it squeezes the spring closed, and as I drop the spring forward, it locks into the groove on the joint, and that's what flicks the spring forward. A little bit hard to explain. I could probably quickly draw it on a piece of paper. That would make sense. I'll make it very large so people can see it.
Okay.
So here's my joint. Okay, might make it a bit darker. That's my joint. I have a drill hole going through both sides. Is that dark enough, Peter? Could probably.
Yeah, we've got it. Yep, that's okay.
Okay, there's my drill hole, little dotted lines. And if you think of the end of my clip, it's just 2 bits of round wire with a gap in between. So that's my clip, which drops down into here, locks into this shape. And these have a drill hole through them as well. I'll just draw those as solid lines. So remember, at a 0.6 drill hole, you've only got 0.6, 0.6 and 0.6. And that gives you 1.8, 1.85. So it's a very fine drill hole. That's obviously not correct as a technical drawing, but there's a drill hole through that wire.
Yep.
And for that wire to sit in this groove properly, I have to have a little groove here on the inside of my joint. So when that wire drops in, it spreads out and it locks into that shape there, and it locks into that shape there. And that's what drives the pin on the correct angle in the ear. Got a bit of an angle there, so it looks a bit weird. So, yeah, very complicated, highly satisfying piece of jewelry to make. You've always got to make 2. You've got to make a pair. But if you can do that successfully, you've probably created one of the most difficult things that there is to really make in jewelry, I think, anyway.
Oh, there you go. Have you got any stories behind any earrings that you've created like that?
Not really. Sounds a bit boring, doesn't it? I think the thing to do, I think, is to make something in silver first, work to a slightly larger gauge material if you can. Get a feel for what you're doing, because you only learn by your mistakes, really. You learn by your successes, but you really do learn by your mistakes. And I think this really teaches you a lot about material preparation, work hardening, tension, working with 2 objects, a joint and a spring at the same time, and having to drill very fine drill holes and use pieces of wire to connect things, and constantly, it's a bit like making a ring. You're constantly putting bits together and then pulling them apart, together again, pulling them apart, and then eventually you decide, no, I'm going to solder them now, I'm happy. And it's the same with an earring fitting like this. You've got to get them working really nicely before you take them apart and you solder one component to your earring, put the pin on your ear, on the earring, but then when you solder the joint on, you've got to be comfortable that it's all going to go together in the end. So, yeah, I just find it very satisfying, that part of jewelry making.
No, there's a number of elements that could go wrong, like those couple of bits of drilling. That's very fine, and to get that to go through to both sides, like you did there before, that you could certainly
quite
mess it
a
up.
few errors doing that. I've made lots and lots of wires and made up gone to make a pair, and the first one, beautiful. And the second one, oh, no, got to start again. And it can be that component that just holds you up. So it's really about being very calm, being very focused, learning how to drill with a very fine, very sharp drill bit. And when you get down to 0.5, 0.6, you're really into another world. It's not like a 1 mil. 1 mil is huge. And we've all broken drill bits, right? We all know what it's like to get a broken drill bit out. But in a job like this, if you break a 0.6 drill bit drilling that little armature through, you may as well just put it in the scrap bin and start again, which I've done on a few occasions.
Okay, yeah.
But it's a really wonderful part of jewelry making, I think, is actually making catches and componentry that snaps, that springs, that does its job. It's not just an ornament like a ring, which has got fancy gems and people are very excited.
There's some engineering there.
There's a lot of engineering involved, and this is the part of jewelry which, as I said, I find exciting because it challenges you every day. Even today, after 42 years, I'm challenged.
Well, that's good.
Stops.
Yeah.
But it keeps you alive and fresh.
A bit of patience with that one and a bit of time. Don't be in a rush.
Yeah.
And then there'll be two big smiles at the end of it. One from you and then one from the customer when they receive them.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a great achievement to make something like this, especially in the world of jewelry as we know it today. It's an amazing. Not many people can actually do this, and you know, it means that your confidence increases because when the customer eventually comes along and goes, oh, I've got these very expensive earrings and I need something done, or, you know, I don't have pierced ears, but I'm desperate to spend a lot of money. Well, you've got the answer then. You know what to do. You can give it a go because you can't always talk people down. You know, you should always be talking people up. Yes, I can do that.
Yes, yeah. Oh, well, you've laid a little challenge there to people.
I hope so. Chris, so. I hope everyone's challenged, even me. I hope you're all challenged. But give it a go. It's very satisfying. To make a pair of earrings like this is extremely satisfying. It changes your perspective on making jewelry, I think. So
how many hours would you think you'd allow to make that pair of earrings?
A pair of these Omega clip ones, that the last ones I showed you, I'd leave 7 or 8 hours to do that. And it's a whole day. You can go out and buy a pair of butterflies for, you know, $150. So you're talking very expensive fittings. There's quite a bit of metal involved. They're not light. But again, it's like these demos. They're not really about what I'm showing you. It's the skill that equips you to make other things. If you can do this, you can make a catch. You know, if you can do this, you can do so many other things with wire and spring mechanisms and safety catches and chains. And it really gives you that opportunity to have the skill to do other things. And that's what I find exciting about jewelry.
Indeed, yeah. It gives you an extra tool to your arsenal, that's for sure.
That's what you want.
Yeah.
Lots of tools.
Chris, thanks for sharing those 3 different methods of earring connections today. That's wonderful. I'm sure people will be very impressed and they'll be eager to give things a go for themselves.
I hope so. I really hope people give it a go. I would encourage you to give it a go. Good for you. Good for your stamina.
Okay, Chris. Until next time, we'll see you then, hey?
Thank you. And go Jai. Go Jai Hindley. Tour de France. Australia's in front.
Oh, okay. Well, Thanks for the update. I didn't know that, so well done.
But yeah, no, good. Give it a go, people. And thanks for being there. And thank you, Peter. Good jewelry making. Cheers now. Bye.